Mean Girls is a film that has several things going for it, but at the same time is held down by a number of cliches. The film stars an at the time very likable and very talented Lindsay Lohan as Katie Heron, a girl who was homeschooled for most of her life in Africa and is entering public school in the United States for the first time at the age of 16. The first part of the film is about Katie attempting to get adjusted to high school, and the meat of the film is about Katie and her friends executing a plan that they have formed to bring down the most popular girl in school after she steals away the boy that Katie has a crush on. Now, of course, I'm not the intended audience for this film, since I'm not a teenage girl, but there's still something about these types of films that grabs me. I think that it's because I'm not a teenage girl that I'm actually sort of drawn into a movie like this. Since I've been through high school as a male, it's interesting to see what the same experiences I had are like for girls. Of course, the high school in this film is filled with stereotypes and dramatized so much that it doesn't really resemble a real high school at all. But I'm still always sort of interested in seeing what a girl's life is like in a fictionalized high school. And while I don't seek them out, anytime I find myself watching a movie about a girl going through high school, it always sort of fascinates me, or at least that particular aspect of the movie does. Now, I don't watch many films about high school girls, mind you, and I never really seek them out, but I've lived on this earth a number of years, and occasionally through a series of events, I will find myself watching something I wouldn't typically watch. But I actually did seek Mean Girls out to watch. At the time I wanted to watch it, I mainly wanted to see the reason why this film had garnered the cult following that it has. And I don't know about most people, but one aspect of the film that I really enjoyed was the first 15 minutes, when the character named Katie was not only trying to figure out how public high school worked, but also trying to figure out how American culture worked. She has several encounters with typical movie teenagers who throw pop culture references her way, and I found these encounters interesting. I think a big reason why is because of Lindsay Lohan's performance. It's not Oscar-worthy, mind you, but it is a good performance. I thought Lohan did a great job of presenting a character who's clearly out of her comfort zone in an American high school, but also possesses a rather upbeat attitude about the whole ordeal. And Katie also seems eager to learn about American customs. I don't think I've ever seen a situation quite like this in any other film in the same category as Mean Girls. And although it wouldn't shock me if this premise existed in other films, or at least something like this, Lohan's performance would probably propel the scenario in Mean Girls over another film that was similar. The character Katie quickly makes friends with a girl and a gay boy, and the girl happens to have a past with another girl named Regina, who also happens to be the most popular girl in school. And when Katie's given the offer to join Regina and her friend's group, she accepts, thinking that the bad things that she's heard about Regina are probably false. However, once Regina intentionally steals away the boy Katie had a crush on, who also happens to be Regina's ex-boyfriend, Katie suddenly goes from an all-around kind person into a vengeful one, and she teams up with her two friends to get revenge on Regina. Now, I found the transition that Katie makes in this film interesting. I don't know how girls in other cultures would act, but I felt that Katie's attitude change was in line with other teenage girls here in the United States. One moment they can be sweet to you, and the next they can be vengeful bitches looking to bring you down, and I really like seeing that in this film. I also like that nothing they did to Regina worked initially. They tried ruining her clothes, but then her clothes simply became a new trend, and everyone started ruining their clothes to match Regina's. And through some manipulation, the two other girls in the popular group also began to turn against Regina. And there's a scene about halfway through the film that does a great job at showing how stereotypical teenage girls operate. They basically are talking to each other on the phone, but pretend to be only talking to one other person. And they'll try to get the girl that they're openly talking to say something about the girl they're secretly talking to. And they'll then act like they have another call or they're having to do something, hold on. And then they'll get on the other line and tell the other girl what the other one said. And if that sounds confusing, I'm sorry. I can't explain it any better. But you'd have to see it in this film because it really works well. And it was a really good job by the writers. And the stuff that I just described are basically little details in the film that I believe make this film good. And I also think that those things I mentioned are the reason why it has the cult following that it does. The makers of this film really did a good job of capturing the little details of the stereotypical high school. And those scenes were some of my favorite parts of the film. Along with this scene, but that's neither here nor there. I said at the beginning of this review that Mean Girls was held down by a number of cliches, and I'm afraid that's true. Let me just name a few, and I don't think I'll have to elaborate very much. The first one is when Katie begins to hang out with the popular girls. You know, she begins to act snobby and begins brushing off her original unpopular friends. And another is the classic end of the movie event. Nearly every film like this has some kind of big event that it leads up to, and it's usually some kind of dance or school year ending event. And this cliche really bothers me because it's very formulaic, and it makes a good movie. It makes a good movie look very typical. I thought Mean Girls was doing a very good job at standing out, and then it sort of falls into the line of typical high school movie with a big event at the end. Ending the film. And the last cliche I want to mention is the time where there's a part where everybody turns against Katie, and then she must give some speech to get their respect back. This one is also a very old cliche that most movies that I've seen about high school have, and also a lot of movies on the Disney Channel. I was very disappointed when these cliches sprang up, because a good bit of the film, including the revenge plot, seemed so interesting and also fairly original. I don't know if it's really original, but it's original for me. And it had to fall victim to some of the same cliches that so many other typical average films have. And the message of the movie had to be delivered to us in some grand speech at the end, instead of in some creative way like I hoped it would be. Man, I mean, so much of this movie was different than others like it, but when it could have really stood out and it could have really been great, it decided to follow the example set by Hallmark and Lifetime movies, and the fact that it couldn't end strongly hurt it a good deal, I'm afraid. With all that being said, I still liked Mean Girls. I liked most of the characters, and I really liked Lohan's performance. And even despite its flaws, the good things in this film that I mentioned earlier helped to pull the film above most of the movies with the same predictable story points. I recommend Mean Girls to anybody who thinks that they may like this film, because if you want to watch it in the first place, then the odds are that you're going to like it. I'm going to give Mean Girls a 7 out of 10. Oh, I need a girlfriend.